저는 오늘 이 자리 진행을 맡은 아나운서 장선영입니다. 반갑습니다. 네, 방금 영상에서 만나보신 것처럼 올해 20주년을 맞이한 글로벌인재포럼, 올해는 공생지능의 시대에 대해서 이야기해볼까 하는데요. 빠르게 발전하고 있는 인공지능에 대한 막연한 기대와 두려움이 아닌 함께 공생하는 방안에 집중하고자 합니다. 인공지능 시대를 살아가고 있는 우리 모두에게 현명한 공존의 조건을 논의하는 뜻깊은 자리가 되시길 바랍니다. 자, 그럼 지금부터 글로벌 인재 포럼 2025 개회식을 본격적으로 시작하겠습니다. 자, 그럼 먼저 개회사가 있겠습니다. 이번 포럼의 주최 기관인 한국경제신문 김정호 사장님을 단상으로 모시겠습니다. 여러분 큰 박수로 맞이해 주시기 바랍니다.
여러분 안녕하십니까? 한국경제신문 사장 김정호입니다. 글로벌인재포럼 2025에 참석해 주신 여러분 환영합니다. 한국경제신문이 대한민국 교육부, 한국직업능력연구원과 공동 주최하는 글로벌인재포럼이 올해로 20주년을 맞았습니다. 지난 20년간 글로벌인재포럼은 시대를 선도하는 어젠다 발굴을 통해 비전을 제시하고 글로벌 인재 육성을 선도하는 데 기여했다고 생각합니다. 글로벌 인재 포럼이 세계적 포럼으로 자리 잡을 수 있도록 애써주신 최교진 교육부 장관님, 고혜원 한국직업능력연구원장님께 먼저 감사 말씀부터 드립니다. 기조연설을 맡아주신 짐 하게만 스나베 지멘스 이사회 의장님, 루먼 초두리 휴메인 인텔리전스 최고경영자님, 특별대담을 맡아주신 염재호 태제대 총장님, 최재천 이화여대 석좌 교수님, 최진석 서강대 명예교수님, 이정동 서울대 교수님 고맙습니다. 존경하는 내외 기민 여러분, 지금 세계는 AI의 발달로 급격한 변화를 겪고 있습니다. 인간의 언어와 사고를 모방하던 AI는 이제 스스로 창작하고 판단하는 단계까지 이르렀습니다. 기술이 발전할수록 기대와 함께 불안감도 커지고 있는 것이 사실입니다. AI가 인간의 일자리를 빼앗고 결국 인간을 대체할 수도 있다는 우려 탓입니다. 글로벌 인재 포럼 2025는 다른 길에 주목했습니다. 인간은 창의성과 직관에, AI는 방대한 데이터 분석과 연산 능력에 능숙합니다. 서로의 강점을 앞세운 상호작용을 통해 우리는 더 큰 지능으로 진화할 수 있다고 생각합니다. 20주년을 맞는 올해 포럼의 주제는 공생지능의 시대로 정했습니다. 세부 세션에는 윤리적 AI 필요성, AI 시대 인간의 경쟁력, 공생지능 시대의 협업, 일자리의 미래 등을 깊이 있게 논의할 예정입니다. 국제기구와 정부, 대학, 기업, 소속 최고 경영자 전문가 여러분 87분이 연사와 토론자로 참여합니다. 짐 하게만 스나베 의장님은 기술 전환을 이끌 공생의 리더십을 주제로, 루먼 초두리 최고경영자님은 공생의 조건에 대한 기조연설을 준비하셨습니다. 염재호 총장님과 최재천 석좌 교수님, 최진석 명예교수님, 이정동 교수님께서는 혁신과 창조의 미래를 주제로 글로벌 인재 포럼 20주년 기념 특별대담을 진행합니다. 오늘 포럼을 찾아주신 모든 분이 각 세션에서 유익한 지식과 통찰력을 가져가시길 기대합니다. 한국경제신문 이 자리에서 논의된 다양한 아이디어와 아젠다가 교육과 산업 현장 그리고 정부 정책에 반영될 수 있도록 최선의 노력을 기울이겠습니다. 글로벌 인재 포럼 2025를 찾아주신 모든 분께 다시 한번 감사드리며 여러분의 가정과 일터에 늘 건강과 행운이 함께하길 기원합니다. 여러분 대단히 고맙습니다.
네, 여러분 다시 한번 큰 박수 보내주시죠. 네, 개회사 말씀 대단히 감사드립니다. 20주년을 맞이한 글로벌 인재포럼과 함께 특별한 인사이트 나누는 시간 되시기 바랍니다. 자, 다음은 환영사가 있겠습니다. 공동 주최기관인 최교진 교육부 장관님을 단상으로 모시겠습니다. 여러분 힘찬 박수로 환영해 주시기 바랍니다.
네, 안녕하세요. 교육부 장관 최교진입니다. 글로벌 인재포럼 2025를 찾아주신 여러분 진심으로 환영합니다. 미래 사회 인재 양성에 대한 심도 있는 지식과 통찰을 나누기 위해 이번 포럼에 함께해 주신 짐 하게만 스나베 지멘스 이사의 의장님, 그리고 루먼 초드리 휴메인 인텔리전스 최고경영자님을 비롯한 국내의 모든 연사분들께 깊은 감사의 인사를 드립니다. 2006년에 처음 시작된 글로벌 인재 포럼이 올해로 20주년을 맞이했습니다. 짧지 않은 시간임에도 매년 세계 각국의 석학과 전문가들이 모여서 함께 고민하고 소통할 수 있는 자리를 꾸준히 마련해 주신 한국경제신문과 한국직업능력연구원에도 감사의 말씀을 함께 드립니다. 존경하는 귀빈 여러분, 우리는 지금 인공지능이 인간의 언어를 이해하고 감정에도 공감하며 함께 일하고 배우는 새로운 시대를 살고 있습니다. 이런 변화 속에서 우리는 다가올 미래를 지혜롭게 맞이하기 위해 삶 속에서 기술과 함께 성장하는 법을 찾아야 할 것입니다. 기술을 강조하는 인공지능 시대를 넘어 인간과 기술이 발전적으로 상호작용하는 공생지능의 시대에 주목해야 하는 이유입니다. 공생지능은 우리에게 새로운 질문을 던집니다. 어떻게 서로의 지혜를 나누고 함께 배우며 더 큰 가능성으로 나아갈 것인가? 그 답을 찾아가는 과정에서 우리는 새로운 배움의 방식을 만들고 인간과 기술이 함께 성장하는 길을 열어가야 하고 열어가게 될 것입니다. 그리고 그 여정의 중심에는 교육이 있습니다. 대한민국은 교육을 통해 기적과도 같은 성장을 이룬 나라입니다. 또 한 번 디지털 대전환이라는 유례없는 도전에 직면한 지금 새로운 시대에 걸맞는 새로운 교육 혁신을 대한민국은 시작하고 있습니다. 우선 우리 아이들이 변화를 주도하는 미래 인재로 커나갈 수 있도록 모든 학교에 2030년까지 인공지능을 내실 있게 교육할 수 있는 기반을 마련하고 학교급에 맞는 인공지능 교육 체계를 완성할 것입니다. 또한 인공지능 거점 대학을 중심으로 인공지능 융복합 전공을 확산하고 첨단 분야 정원 확대를 통해 대학의 혁신 또한 가속화하겠습니다. 앞으로의 시대에 무엇보다 중요한 것은 생각하는 힘, 질문하는 능력, 그리고 인간다운 상상력입니다. 기술이 아닌 인간의 사유와 감성이 공생지능의 시대를 살아가는 근원이 될 수 있도록 질문 중심의 수업과 인문학적 상상력을 확대해 나가겠습니다. 존경하는 귀빈 여러분, 앞으로 우리가 살아갈 공생지능의 시대는 혼자가 아닌 함께 배우고 함께 성장하며 함께 더 나은 세상을 만들어가는 시대입니다. 인공지능과 인간뿐만 아니라 사회 각 분야가 지식과 경험을 공유하며 협력할 때 우리는 더 큰 지혜와 혁신을 만들어갈 수 있습니다. 이번 포럼이 우리 사회에 공생지능의 화두를 던지는 계기가 되기를 바랍니다. 다시 한번 글로벌 인재포럼 2025에 함께해 주신 모든 분들께 깊은 감사와 환영의 말씀을 드립니다. 고맙습니다.
네, 여러분 다시 한번 큰 박수 보내주십시오. 네, 장관님 말씀 대단히 감사드립니다. 공생지능의 시대, 올해 글로벌 인재포럼과 함께 새로운 가능성과 기회를 찾아가는 시간 되시기 바랍니다. 자, 이어지는 인사 말씀은 고혜원 한국직업능력연구원 원장님께서 함께해 주시겠습니다. 원장님을 단상으로 모시겠습니다. 여러분 따뜻한 박수로 환영해 주시죠.
네, 안녕하세요. 한국직업능력연구원 원장 고혜원입니다. 먼저 글로벌인재포럼 2025에 함께해 주신 모든 내외 기빈과 참석자 여러분을 진심으로 환영합니다. 올해로 20주년을 맞은 이번 글로벌인재포럼은 그동안 교육부와 한국경제신문 그리고 국내외 여러 기관의 협력을 통해서 세계적인 논의의 장으로 성장해 왔습니다. 특별히 이 자리를 가능하게 해주신 교육부 최규진 장관님 그리고 한국경제신문 김정호 사장님을 비롯해서 애써주신 모든 분들께 깊은 감사를 드립니다. 인공지능의 비약적인 발전은 어느덧 우리의 일상과 그리고 일터에 깊숙이 스며들어서 인류에게 지속적으로 질문을 던지고 있습니다. 혁신과 기회의 장처럼 보이는 이 변화는 동시에 불안과 양극화를 확대시키며 인류의 연대와 협력을 시험하고 있습니다. 원래 포럼의 대주제인 공생지능의 시대는 단순히 기술의 담론이 아니라 지금 인류가 당면한 과제를 함께 해결해 나가고자 하는 의지를 반영하고 있습니다. 인공지능이 우리를 빠르고 효율적으로 대체하는 오늘, 우리는 동시에 인간 다음에 본질을 다시 묻고 있습니다. 관계와 공감 그리고 책임과 신뢰와 같은 가치는 기술이 줄 수 없는 영역이자 앞으로의 사회를 지탱할 근간입니다. 따라서 우리는 기술이 아닌 인간을 그리고 경쟁이 아닌 공존을 분절이 아닌 연대를 선택함으로써 미래를 새롭게 설계해야 합니다. 이것이야말로 인류가 인공지능 시대에 지녀야 할 진정한 공생지능일 것입니다. 이번 포럼에서는 인공지능과 디지털 전환이 만들어낸 변화 속에서 인류가 어떻게 협력과 신뢰를 회복할 수 있을지 또 미래 인재가 지녀야 할 역량과 가치가 무엇인지를 논의하게 됩니다. 이러한 논의가 인류가 직면한 도전에 대응하고 또한 지속 가능한 발전을 이룰 새로운 해법과 방향을 제시하는 데 중요한 토대가 되기를 기대합니다. 우리 한국직업능력연구원도 인재양성 정책을 도출하고자 최선을 다하면서 앞으로도 여러분들과 함께 지속가능한 미래를 준비하는 역할을 충실히 수행할 것입니다. 오늘과 내일 귀한 시간을 내서 글로벌 인재 포럼에 참석해 주시는 모든 분들께 다시 한번 깊이 감사드립니다. 고맙습니다.
네, 여러분 다시 한번 큰 박수 보내주시죠. 네, 원장님 말씀 대단히 감사드립니다. 고맙습니다. 자, 이어서 글로벌 인재포럼 20주년을 축하해 주시기 위해서 이재명 대통령님께서 축사를 보내주셨는데요. 축사는 제가 대독으로 전해드리겠습니다. 글로벌 인재포럼 2025 개막을 진심으로 축하드립니다. 이 자리를 빛내주신 짐하게만 스나베 지멘스 이사회 의장님, 루먼 초두리 휴메인 인텔리전스 최고경영자님을 비롯한 국내외 연사와 참석자 여러분께 따뜻한 환영 인사를 전합니다. 또한 지난 20년 동안 글로벌 인재포럼을 세계적인 지식 공유와 협력의 장으로 일궈온 한국경제신문, 교육부, 한국직업능력연구원 관계자 여러분의 노고에도 박수를 보냅니다. 세계는 지식 기반 사회를 지나 AI 시대로 접어들고 있습니다. AI가 인류의 삶을 바꾸고 산업 경쟁력을 좌우하는 시대가 시작되었습니다. 이번 에이펙 행사를 계기로 대한민국은 AI 3대 강국으로서의 기반을 확고히 했습니다. 앞으로 더 많은 투자로 명실상부한 AI 3강이 되려 합니다. AI 시대에는 기술의 발전도 중요하지만 이에 못지않게 어떻게 기술을 잘 활용할 수 있을지도 매우 중요합니다. AI 핵심 인재 양성과 더불어 적절한 교육을 통해 누구나 AI를 활용할 수 있도록 해야 합니다. 이런 시점에 글로벌 인재 포럼이 열리게 되어 무척 뜻깊게 생각합니다. 이번 포럼이 인간과 AI의 공존, 산업과 교육의 연대, 인류 공동의 번영을 향한 새로운 약속의 무대가 되길 기대합니다. 다시 한번 글로벌 인재 포럼 2025를 축하드립니다. 고맙습니다. 2025년 11월 5일 대통령 이재명. 네, 여러분 따뜻한 박수 한번 보내주시죠. 네, 축사 보내주신 대통령님께도 다시 한번 진심으로 감사 인사를 드리겠습니다. 자, 이상으로 개회식을 마무리하고 지금부터는 기조연설을 시작으로 본격적인 논의의 장을 열어보도록 하겠습니다. 자, 먼저 첫 번째 기조연설을 소개해드리겠습니다. 첫 번째 기조연설은 짐 하게만 스나베 지멘스 이사회 의장께서 기술 전환을 이끌 공생의 리더십에 대해서 강연 수고해 주시겠습니다. 자, 그럼 짐 하게만 스나베 의장님을 소개드립니다. Yes, the floor is yours. Please come up to the stage. 네, 여러분 다시 한번 큰 박수 보내주십시오.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, ministers, thank you so much for the opportunity to come today. During my time as co-CEO of SAP, I often visited South Korea, and I always enjoyed coming here. South Korea offers a remarkable blend of strong culture and modern innovation. I remember visiting the palace in Seoul and learning about the Sunmungu drum, the great drum at the gate that any citizen could strike to bring their concerns directly to the king. For me, this is a very powerful symbol of respect for people and of leadership that believes in the potential of human beings. And that is also the main keynote of me today, how we can use technology to make a better future by unleashing human potential. But let me start a long time ago, 160 years ago, a little bit after Siemens was created, with a very famous quote from a novel, A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. It starts, as you all know, with the very famous line, "It was the best of times, it was the worst of times." And it continues on talking about the spring of hope and the winter of despair. The novel was a story of the French Revolution and how it affected people's lives in two cities, London and Paris. It was the story of radical change and how radical change ended up in revolution and the death of people. Now, even if this novel was written 160 years ago, in many ways it describes the world we live in today. It is the best of times because we have technologies that are so profound that we can make a significantly better future. And it is the worst of times because we seem to be getting in our own way of taking advantage of this technology. I think we are all aware of the geopolitical challenges that we all face today. Globalization is under attack. As a consequence, we see the economic slowdown in the entire world. Some people even talk about a recession. According to the IMF, we can expect a growth rate of roughly 3% in 2025 and 2026. For South Korea, the estimated growth rate is even lower. However, such a growth rate is, in fact, just an average number. And I have never been a big fan of averages. I often say that if I have my head in an oven and my feet in ice, in average, I'm fine, but I'm really not. So, the question is, what is behind this average growth of only 3%? A low average growth does not mean that everything is slowing down. Just look at the value of the AI-related companies. They are growing exponentially. Look at NVIDIA, more than $5 trillion of value. So instead of thinking of this as a potential recession, I believe we need to look at it as a transition. A transition from an analog and carbon-heavy world to a digital, intelligent, and more sustainable world. With that mindset, this is not a time to be depressed about a potential recession. It is a time to be excited about the opportunities that lie ahead of us if we can get our arms around it. I often say that I am a concerned optimist. Concerned because the current state of the world is not very optimistic, but optimistic because I believe we have the biggest chance ever to create a better future. And it is up to us to lead that direction. Now, to do that, I think we need more than continuous improvement. Since the start of the Industrial Revolution, we have been working on continuous improvements of all of the value chains that we operate in the world today. And it's time to ask ourselves, how are we doing? Is it good enough to be continuously improving the current state of the world? I believe not. If we look at just these three value chains that we all interact with on a daily basis, transportation systems, food systems, healthcare systems, despite 150 years of trying to optimize, we have not come very far. The transportation system is based on the idea of individual transportation, and the automotive industry has been optimizing the car for more than 100 years. Today we have a situation where that asset, the car, is utilized less than 8% in its entire life. When we utilize it, we are not moving very fast. The infrastructure accounts for 10% of global CO2 emissions and kills roughly 1.2 million people every year. Not impressive after 100 of years of optimizing. The food system is not much better today. The food system is a food system where we have in average around 40% waste. So 40% of the food that we produce never reaches a human being. The system itself accounts for 30% of global CO2 emissions, and more than 1 billion people live with obesity today because we don't eat very healthy food. And that, of course, brings me to healthcare, one of the most important elements in human value and life. In today's healthcare system, we are not managing health, we are managing diseases. It's a very expensive healthcare system, where in the US alone, the healthcare system accounts for 18% of the global GDP, and with an aging population, that number is expected to rise. This is not impressive progress after 150 years of trying. The same is actually true with AI. Now, while the ChatGPTs and the large language models are relatively new to us, we have been exposed to AI for more than 15 years. And if you look at where we use it today, we mostly use it through the social media apps that are on our phones, where we get exposed to advertising business models because the AI is intelligent enough to figure out what we might desire and how we can change our mind. Some people have these speakers installed in their houses. I call them microphones. And soon, when we have the glasses, the social media companies will know not only where you are and what you do, but what you see and what you hear and what you speak. This will only make the tendency of influencing our lives through advertising of AI models significantly worse. I believe it is time for a radical new thinking around how can we use this technology, because that cannot be the most valuable use of AI. I believe that we are at a very, very significant inflection point in life. An inflection point that is driven by three parallel forces that all will influence how the future will develop. Geopolitical tensions, as we all know, planetary boundaries that are getting very serious, and technology disruption, where speed becomes our biggest challenge. We have some very hard choices to make. Will we continue to optimize the past and continuously improve what we have? Or do we have the courage to lead in shaping a future that is radically better? I believe it's time to be more radical in our leadership, and I see a lot of that happening here in Korea. It reminds me of a quote that I use more and more these days as I think about how we can lead to a better future. A quote from Bernard Shaw, who said, "Most people see things the way they are and ask why. I imagine things that never were and ask, why not?" I think this quote is the essence of the difference between continuous improvement, asking why, and more radical reinvention, why not? It is time for us to imagine a better future, a radically better future, and ask, why not? Imagine the future of transportation, where we do not have individual cars, but we have individual transportation. An infrastructure where these devices are autonomous, they are electric, and they take us from A to B without any waiting time. This is an infrastructure that will be dramatically better than today. We will have utilization rates of 80% instead of 8%. We will have zero carbon emissions. And we will convert the waiting time in cars to productive times during transportation. The benefits are obvious. It's a more sustainable, more affordable, and a more safe infrastructure. Or imagine the future of energy. We are now at the inflection point of energy price, where the electricity produced by sustainable means like solar and wind are below the cost of fossil fuels, which means we will have an inflection point of acceleration. Again, we have an opportunity to create more sustainable, more affordable, and in principle abundant energy, because the sun alone delivers 4,000 times more energy to this planet than we consume as human beings today. And our data centers need a lot of energy so that we can take full advantage of AI. Again, a much better view of a future. And the same is true for food and healthcare. If we shift healthcare to healthy, if we shift healthcare from managing diseases to predictive health situations and preventing health issues, we can dramatically improve human lives and live healthier and longer lives, and at the same time reduce the cost of the healthcare system. Now, if we do that in concert with the food system, where we actually reinvent a food system to have less waste and be much more healthy, like the culture here in Korea, we would have a significant opportunity to actually have an aging population that lives happy lives much longer at much reduced costs. So the benefits of all of these examples are very significant. And they all require the use of artificial intelligence, not in a language model, but in very profound, deep domain expertise areas so that we can understand the value chain and we can reinvent it for more sustainability, for more affordability, and for more human interaction. So the question is, with all of these benefits, why are we not getting there? For me, it is all about leadership. And hence, I was very impressed to see this conference now for 20 years in a row. This is the opportunity to be courageous around leadership and discuss and decide how we want to use technology for the future. The best example I have of a courageous leadership dream is John F. Kennedy's moon shot. And I'm often asked, what is leadership all about? And I always answer, leadership is about dreams and details. Dreams to inspire people about a future that they couldn't imagine themselves, but that get inspired by so that they want to participate in the journey. And details, because if we don't master the critical details, the dream will just stay a dream. When John F. Kennedy announced his intent to put a man on the moon and return him safely to the earth, he did not master the details, but his dream inspired an entire nation. It even inspired my parents living in Denmark, many thousand kilometers away, and inspired researchers to come and join the project and figure out how to master the details. And I would argue that because of this dream, USA took a technological leadership in the world that we still see elements of today. So that is the kind of leadership that I am speaking about. Not a leadership where technology decides where we go, but where leaders have the courage to dream big and inspire people to join them on the journey. I have myself tried such a dream once in my business life with Maersk. Maersk is the largest shipping company in the world. I had the pleasure of being chairman of Maersk from 2017 to 2022. In 2018, the company was very proud of the progress we had made in reducing carbon emissions from shipping. But instead of asking the traditional question, the continuous improvement question, how far can we get by 2030? Management asked a different question. What will it take to do zero carbon shipping? At the time, we did not have the answer to this question. And despite this uncertainty, we decided to declare to the world zero carbon shipping by 2050. I'm sure there were people in that room who felt 2050 is so far out that I can vote in favor of that because I will not be around anyway. But in fact, it was a very daunting challenge because to deliver on the commitment of zero carbon shipping by 2050, we had to invent the first zero carbon shipping vessel by 2030 because it takes roughly 20 years to replace an entire fleet. We made the commitment. We dreamed of zero carbon shipping in 2018. We knew we had to get the first vessel sailing in 2030. In 2021, intelligent people found the right solution, Power to X. We ordered the first vessel and then 18 more, and that first vessel sailed in 2023. Why am I telling you this story? Because what seemed to be a daunting and impossible task in 2018, only a few years later, was a plan and delivery because we mastered the details and suddenly we were 7 years ahead of the original impossible plan. Since then, Maersk has committed to accelerate the zero-carbon shipping to 2040 because 2050 suddenly looked too easy. Now, the other part of the leadership that I am asking is the details. How do we master the right details? And I believe there are two details that we must master very fast. One is AI, and one is the development of human beings. They are closely connected, as this conference will show. Now, with AI, I'm sure we all agree we have the biggest opportunity ever to build a better future. But it requires us to understand the power of this technology, and most of all, it requires us to decide deliberately how we want to use this technology. The dream of AI is very clear to me, and it resembles very much the technology some hundreds of years ago, the printed press. With the printed press, we democratized knowledge. Before the printed press, only few people had access to knowledge because it was very expensive to write the knowledge down and impossible to distribute the knowledge. For me, AI is the opportunity to democratize intelligence. Imagine what happens in a company or in a country when every human being is super intelligent. Imagine the opportunity that we would have if we could make that happen. Now, for me, that is much more than a large language model. Large language models are impressive because they mimic the way we speak, they can translate everything, and they can even write a book like Charles Dickens better than I can. But it doesn't necessarily understand the meaning of a book like A Tale of Two Cities. Now, in order for us to master AI, I believe we should not just look at AI of today, where we sometimes get a little bit scared, but we should, like I argue with our supply chains and value chains, imagine how will AI be in years to come. I have 3 predictions for where AI is going. First of all, I predict that AI will be more intelligent than human beings in most areas of expertise. Not large language models, but the combination of language models that interact with human beings and domain-specific, very deep AI models that are built around data more than AI in healthcare, in transportation, in food, etc. The combination of that allows for AI to be more intelligent than human beings in most domains. Secondly, I predict that AI will move into the physical world. Today we talk a lot about agentic AI as the AI that helps us write the emails or book the travel or manage the travel expenses. But AI will move into the robotics world and therefore be in the physical world and be able to act on our behalf in the physical world. And I do predict as well that AI will be everywhere. The glasses of Meta is just the first example of AI bringing it to the human beings. But AI will be in every device that we will interact with, whether it's the car, it's the manufacturing machine, it's the robot. It will be everywhere. It will decentralize. It will no longer be based on large data centers where the training will happen, but the intelligence will move close to the device, into the device. Now, if these 3 predictions are true, we are up for quite a ride in the future. It means that AI will be everywhere, super intelligent, and able to take action. What happens when we have that? Now, at Siemens, we have prepared ourselves for this world, and we believe that there will be 3 very significant changes happening to a company like Siemens, an industrial and technology giant like Siemens. We look at the benefits and the opportunities of AI in 3 categories. The first category is productivity. I think we all understand that we spend a lot of time doing things that are not very useful today. I already use AI to help answer some of my emails, and the other day I thought maybe the email that I received was also written by AI, so maybe one day AI will just send emails to each other and we don't have to spend too much time on that. When we look at this from a Siemens point of view, we believe that we have at least 20% productivity progress with AI used in the right way, in the white-collar work organization. Maybe more. The second element or category of AI progress and benefits is in the area of predictive AI. So not writing the email or managing the travel, but predicting issues in supply chains, predicting issues in machines that will break down. Already today we are able to predict the failure of a door in a train more than 10 days before it happens, and of course with that we can optimize the utilization of our assets. We believe this category, being able to predict in a world that is almost unpredictable, will be higher value for us than the 20% productivity improvement. And last but not least, we believe that AI will dramatically accelerate innovation, not just at Siemens, but also for our customers. Imagine a world where the technology is not just used to design a car and simulate its characteristics before it's built, but where you can speak to a computer and say, please design me a sports car with 2 seats, a range of 750 kilometers in one charge, and a sports car that looks a little bit better than a Porsche 911. This is within reach of today's technology when we get very specific domain AI, and we are working on that. As you can imagine, this category will be even more disruptive and more valuable than 20% productivity or the ability to predict the future and prevent things from happening. So we are at a very, very significant inflection point in history. And the question that we need to ask ourselves is, how do we take advantage of this technology in the categories I spoke about? I always say that we are lucky to be leaders in times of such radical change and in times of such powerful technology. But with that luck comes an obligation to use the technology to create a better future, a better company, a better society, a better country. And that is not on the shoulders of technology. That is the shoulders of leaders. Technology is no longer the limitation for the opportunity. Our imagination might be the limitation, and our leadership is needed more than ever. So the question that I ask myself every morning when I get up is, what do we want to use AI for? And more importantly, what role do we want human beings to play in that future? I get very scared when I hear that large language models that tend to hallucinate quite a lot suddenly allow agentic AI to do actions on our behalf. And I truly believe that this technology should be an extension of human beings, not a replacement. If we continue on the current path where we let technology and to some extent social media platforms decide how we use AI, I believe we will be facing the worst of times, like Charles Dickens spoke about. Instead, we need to develop human beings to take full advantage of this technology, which starts with reinventing our education system, like the minister spoke about. The education system is teaching young people to answer questions. In the future, we need to be masters of asking the right questions and leveraging technology to create a better world. At the end of this cycle of AI fascination, the technology will not be the decisive factor because everyone will have access to the same advanced technology. So the decisive differentiation is human beings. And I truly believe that the more we focus on technology, the more we need to focus on human beings. And most of all, we need to make sure that human beings stay in control of technology and that we lead technology in a direction that is good for business and society. So, ladies and gentlemen, I am a concerned optimist. For me, AI is like the drum in front of the king's palace that empowers and enables human beings to come up with great ideas for a better future. And I can easily imagine that South Korea will be one of the countries that lead the way to such a better future. Why not? Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for your presentation. And before we wrap up the session, we have some questions for you. So I will deliver the questions. So first question is actually in Korea, many Gen Z employees talk about a mindset called 3 whys. So lovely captured in English as why me and why this task and why do I have to. These are common reactions when work is assigned, especially when the assignment feels burdensome or even unfair. So seen another way, it's also a way to avoid responsibility for certain tasks that are clearly in one's job description because many young employees equate a failure experience with incompetence. So related trends like leaderphobia and unbossing and quiet quitting are spreading. So in this context, what does sustainable leadership look like? Given this shift in how people work and related to authority, what kind of leadership should we cultivate now? Please answer it.
Thank you very much. A profound question. And, you know, I just turned 60, so who am I to tell about Gen Z? But I do believe that it goes to the essence of my leadership principle. For more than 100 years, leadership was about strategizing and turning strategy into plans and then making sure we execute the plan. That model only works if your plan is right. But in a world of unpredictability like we have today, the plan is always wrong. And I think this generation is challenging the essence of this leadership model, where we tell people what to do. So my leadership principle and the book I wrote called Dreams and Details is about translating strategy into dreams, not plans. Dreams that inspire people to where we want to go and why. And Gen Z, why matters a lot. That's why they ask these questions. And if you can translate strategy into a dream that is meaningful and inspiring, you don't have to tell people what to do. They will find the best way to do it, assuming they have the right skills and the right tools. So rather than translating strategy into plans, we need to inspire this next generation about a better future, how AI will create this opportunity. We need to teach them how to master this technology to perfection and to give them courage to find the best way to deliver on that dream. That is the essence of Dreams and Details, and I believe it speaks to the heart of the Gen Z, who will always question us, why do I have to do this task? Now let me add one comment. In this world where many things will be taken over by AI, I still believe we need to teach the young generation the fundamentals. And even in a world of AI, we need to work hard, we need to be ambitious, we need to be able to collaborate. And so these fundamental principles should not go away because the world suddenly is easier, because technology can do it for us. It becomes maybe even more important.
Thank you very much. Next question is, many organizations struggle with short-term shareholder expectations while trying to pursue long-term purpose-driven transformation. So what concrete governance practices have you seen succeed in aligning these competing pressures? Please.
Again, I think this is a very fundamental question. I do believe that if business leaders let themselves be too much guided by the short-term shareholder, then we will never get away from continuous improvement. And I have seen many, many examples of companies in leading roles in the world that missed the opportunity to reinvent themselves, and somebody else came and challenged the industry. So for a company to stay relevant, my philosophy is that you constantly need to challenge your assumptions, and you constantly need to be willing and able to reinvent yourself. Siemens is almost 180 years old. We could not be 180 years old unless we constantly reinvented ourselves. And reinvention is much harder for successful companies. Clayton Christensen talks about the innovator's dilemma, which is the essence of the same question. Namely that if you are successful, your success prevents you from challenging fundamentals, and you want to extend your success too long, and eventually you become irrelevant. I only found two solutions to Clayton Christensen's innovator's dilemma. The first solution is never become successful, and you will not have this problem. It's not a good solution, but theoretically it's a solution. If you don't accept that solution, then the second solution is that when you are at your most successful moment is the time when you need to challenge everything and reinvent yourself. And with AI, every company are now at that inflection point where continuous improvement will not make it. You must reinvent. Reinvention, in my world, is about imagining the future and then calculating backwards, not starting with what you have and improving that. And so to overcome the short-term shareholder, you need to stand on a stage like this and imagine the future with them, because that could become a dramatically better company. That is what we have done with Siemens over the last 10 years. And today Siemens is becoming a technology company where we combine hardware, software, data, and AI in the real world, not in some fancy social media world, and improve and make infrastructures more intelligent and more sustainable. If you can tell that story with conviction, your shareholders will come along and they will see a very huge benefit in the value of the company, like we have seen at Siemens over the last 10 years.
Thank you very much. Last but not least, one more question. So in global companies such as Siemens, when executing transformation and innovation through decentralized teams and field operations, what advantages and challenges did you encounter compared to a centralized approach? As a leader, what decisions of focus and prioritization did you make to integrate technological innovation into the existing culture and infrastructure? And how did you overcome resistance or difficulties from employees during this process? Please answer it.
Again, a very complex question which fosters a profound answer. I have struggled with this centralized versus decentralized for many years of my leadership. At my early career with SAP, we were an innovation company and very decentralized. But very decentralized execution reduces scale. It has great ideas, but limited scale. Later in my career, I chose to centralize because I wanted scale, but then I had no big ideas anymore because the teams were managed centrally. And over the recent years, I come to believe that the right answer is a combination. I believe you need to centralize, if you may, the strategic direction of the company, the development of the dream of what you want to become in the future as an organization. There can only be one dream for the organization, and it has to be explained in such a way that everyone in the organization gets inspired. The clarity about where we are going and why we are going is the enabler of decentralized. A few weeks ago, we had the CEO of Lego visiting Siemens at a business conference with roughly 600 of our leaders. And he spoke about the centralization of what he called the operating model. And in Lego terms, it is the structure of the Lego pieces. They have a surface, and because they all have the same surface and the same quality, they can be combined in unbelievable many ways, decentrally. And I think that is the essence of leadership in today's world. We cannot define and plan everything. We cannot tell next generation what to do because they will ask why. Well, we can inspire them about where we are going, and we can tell them the boundary conditions for how we operate in this company. And then we can trust them in a decentralized model where they are allowed to experiment but not break the dream or the centralized operating model. If you can combine these two, you will get brilliance of human beings, because when we unleash human beings and don't tell them what to do, they can do so much more. Like my example at Maersk, which suddenly was 10 years ahead of an impossible plan because we allowed them to think big. And at the same time, you don't deviate from your strategic intent and your dream for the company. With AI, we democratize intelligence, which means the assumption as leaders must be that everyone is super capable. And therefore, we need to stop telling people what to do and offering them space to find a better way to do it, while at the same time staying consistent to the dream. With AI, this question is even more challenging. And I have seen both approaches on AI. First, you decentralize the deployment of AI. You get great pilots, but they never scale. So you get speed, but no scale. Then you centralize AI, because now we need to have a plan, and the board asks for a plan, and now you get scale, but no speed, because we debate long how to do this instead of getting it done. It's a good example of where I think you need to centralize the choice of technology and the architecture that you want and the areas where you see the value of AI, and then you decentralize the deployment and the brilliance of human beings to take advantage of this technology. And most importantly, in the middle of this, you invest in human beings so that we can unleash them from the tasks that technology can do in the future and unleash their human potential in areas where we believe, where you believe, that the human values, the human intelligence, the human capacity can never be replaced by technology. I am a big believer in human potential. I think everyone deserves an A at university. And for the first time in history, we have a chance to go from average orientation. We teach the average student. We manage health from an average point of view to individual, where we can train individual people at their pace, in their way, in their areas of interest. And with that, we are looking at a significant opportunity when we unleash human beings in a coordinated way, because we are clear about where we're going and why we are going there. If we can do that, the future will be beautiful. Thank you.
네, 여러분 다시 한번 큰 박수 보내주십시오.